Well, good morning, one and all. I'm Ed Lebo. I'm the director of the Public Art Program with the Phoenix Office of Arts and Culture. And welcome to the second in a four-part series on digital tools. Those of you who were here last week know that Bill Dambrova walked you through really some pretty detailed understanding of Photoshop. And over the next month, every Thursday this time, he'll be walking you through some more. Today is about Illustrator. Next week will be SketchUp, and then the week beyond that will be Vectorworks. So those of you who are obviously here know to go to phoenix.gov/arts and then follow the link for the workshop and sign up. And that said, I also know that the great workshops that Katie Stiegel ran last month, that is the Public Art 101s, they're all going to be uploaded as a permanent resource. So if you want to go back and review any of those workshops about how to apply for projects, contracting, design, and then construction, all of those will be available on our website for you to refer to in the future. And I'd recommend you do that if you haven't already seen those. For today's session, as you know from these past ones, if you've been involved, if you have questions along the way, simply log onto your chat box and submit those questions. When Bill is done with his presentation, we'll go to those questions so that you can have a back and forth to get greater understanding about the work and the tools. And also, quite honestly, if you have ideas for future professional development workshops, let us know. We are delighted to host these. We're lining up a series of very specific workshops related to contracting, but also specific projects. So you can talk with artists or see how artists took a project from concept all the way through construction. And there'll be a wide range of those projects in the coming year. With that, I'd like to have everybody sort of wave some hands on staff. Katie, you're there. Why don't you wave your hand? She will be fielding questions in the chat box, if that's okay. Barry Sparkman, if you can wave your hand there. Barry has been working to organize this particular series. Bill Dambrova is there. And then Doug Oland, you can either wave or blink your monitor. But Doug is our collections manager, and he's responsible for maintaining and conserving all the works that are in the city's public art collection. And then out there on the phone is senior project manager Elizabeth Corrales. Again, if you have ideas for future projects, simply shoot us a note. We'll be happy to try and consider those and get them going. And now, without much more talk from me, I just wanted to introduce both Barry and Bill Dambrova. Barry's extraordinary project manager who's been overseeing the new terrazzo installation that Bill designed for the rental car center station of the Phoenix SkyTrain. We expect that will be open sometime in the coming year. We don't have a date on that just yet, but that will be something to look forward to. Bill is a native Arizonan. He's a graduate of ASU with a BA in studio art. And I would underscore something here is that you go through studio training, and often the orientation of studio art training is to galleries and museums. Bill has exhibited in galleries and museums locally, regionally, and throughout the nation. But he's also sort of expanded his abilities to do quite a range of other things. And this is something artists do really, really well. They're great problem solvers. And so he sort of moved into exhibition design for a wide range of institutions, natural history museums, zoos, aquariums, and other such great things. And most recently, as I mentioned, he's been a public artist designing a 6,000 square foot terrazzo floor for the city of Phoenix. So without further ado, let me introduce Barry, who will walk you through a little bit more introduction and then on to Bill's great presentation. Thank you, one and all, for joining us. I know it's beautiful out, but this is going to be a sensational presentation, and we'll look forward to hearing your questions.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us and spending your Thursday morning with us. We're happy to be able to find this way to connect and continue to provide some support for local artists during these challenging times. And we're really grateful for Bill for leading these workshops. His experience, both as a studio artist and a designer, really equip him well for being able to explain to studio artists how to use these digital files to produce public art. I would encourage you to also look at Bill's website, dambrova.com, to find out more about his experience and his work. And just one more reminder to keep yourself muted until the end of the question period. And please, by all means, send us questions in the chat box. Take it away, Bill.
All righty, I'm going to do the screen share. Can you see my screen, Barry?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to hide you guys down here in the corner. All right, I'm going to start with a quick overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. So welcome, everyone, everybody watching live and everybody watching the YouTube channel on the City of Phoenix Arts and Culture's webpage. Also want to thank everybody at City of Phoenix Arts and Cultures for giving me this chance to help navigate through Illustrator. So in this workshop, I'm going to demonstrate how I used Illustrator to design the metal line work for my public art project, and I'll do it in a way that I can sneak in some tips and shortcuts to help you better understand and navigate Illustrator. So what I'm going to be showing you today is how I designed this metal line work for my terrazzo floor. And I'll be doing this zooming in and out every once in a while, hopefully, so I can show you what buttons and stuff I'm clicking, because the screen is kind of small there on your Zoom windows, or on your WebEx windows, excuse me. So I want to direct you to the Adobe website where you can find Illustrator tutorials. I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of these things, but you can find a more in-depth tutorial on their webpage. So I have 40 minutes to talk about a lot of stuff, and you can just go in and talk about changing the color for 20 minutes. So after you start using Illustrator, Photoshop, or any of these programs, highly recommend just going to the Adobe page and looking through these tutorials. And also you can YouTube stuff. If you have a question like how do you change a stroke, just Google it, and there's tons of videos on how to do that kind of stuff. A little bit about the project. Terrazzo is a composite material poured in place with precast and consists of bits of marble, quartz, glass, mirror, shell, or other suitable material. It's poured with colored cement like a binder. I want to say resin, but it's some kind of cementitious material actually. Many use metal strips to divide the sections or changes in color and material in a pattern. It reminds me of stained glass. So again, here's this line that I'm going to be showing you how I did the line work using Illustrator. Hang on a second. Somehow it's not clicking to the next slide there. So after I had my design idea, I talked with my project manager and the Waterjet Metal Company and the Terrazzo Company to find out what types of digital files they needed. The Metal Waterjet Company asked for a single line Illustrator file. So I don't have to draw the line to be the exact width of the actual metal line work, which will end up to be, whoa, sorry about that. Just hit my wheel. So I just need to do a single vector pen line, and their machine will do the work in creating the width of the metal line. The image that I'm doing in Illustrator doesn't need to be drawn to scale, meaning it doesn't have to be drawn full size. If I did have to draw it to scale, I probably would have drawn it in Vectorworks, which is an AutoCAD program that helps you draw things to actual scale, and you can dimension everything really easily on there. And I'll be showing you that program on the final week of my workshops, 2 Thursdays away. They told me to make sure that my Illustrator file, my design is on its own layer separate from the building plan view. And lastly, I talked to the Terrazzo Company, and they just wanted me to number my line drawing so that they knew what colors corresponded with what numbers. So they didn't have to look at a map with all the colors and try to decipher which colors are which. They looked at the numbers. So here's an example of how they actually just wrote the numbers right onto the floor so they could make sure they got the colors correct in between the metal line work. just so you know, a CNC water jet color is an industrial strength tool that has a capability to cut various materials by using an extremely high pressure jet of water. While water can be used alone, it's mixed with an abrasive to cut harder materials like metal or granite. So they'll take my Illustrator file and put it into their computer, which is a CAD program that will run this machine and draw the line work. So again, about vector and raster files, you often hear files described as either vector or raster. Vector files are what we're going to be working with today. They're made up of geometry like lines and curves. Everything is sharp edged and cannot be pixelated unless you save it as a JPEG or other raster format. When you zoom way in or out, the line quality remains sharp and doesn't pixelate. Raster images are images that use tiny dots or pixels to make up images with subtle chromatic gradations. Raster images are usually digital photographs. We can talk about PDFs today as well. They're portable document format files. They're used to distribute read-only documents. Read-only means that if you're the recipient of the file, you can only view it. You can't manipulate the file in any way. They're commonly used for documents like manuals, ebooks, application forms, scan documents, and I use them for museum graphics and large format photo murals. You can use PDFs to compress your Illustrator files, keeping the line work as vector, and any images that you have in the document stay rasterized. You can share PDFs with people that do not have Illustrator installed on their computer. Usually it's Adobe PDF Reader, and sometimes that's a free program, I think. There are other types of readers that read PDFs that you can get for free. If you export an Illustrator file as a JPEG, you'll lose the vector line quality and all the line work will become pixelated. So I'm using a Mac. Command on a Mac is the control key on Windows. Option on a Mac is Alt on Windows. And that is the extent of my knowledge of the differences between Mac and Windows. Just encourage you to today just watch my demonstration. You don't have to take notes or anything. It's mostly just to show you how I use these programs to create my digital files. And you can come back and watch it a few times once it's on the YouTube channel, and then take notes at that point. So getting started, what I needed to do was to start, I just needed to know what the shape of the floor was going to be. So I asked Barry to see if he could get me the architect's rendering of the rental car return station so I could see the shape of the floor. And they will give you a PDF that you can print out. Or, in my case, I asked for a DWG file, which is an AutoCAD file, because I can use AutoCAD. I asked for one so I could import it into SketchUp and have a 3D model of the building. And so, I'll show you SketchUp next week. But what's cool about Illustrator is that you can actually open up DWG files with Illustrator. And again, my favorite way to open these files on a Mac is just by dropping it right into the icon of the program. It's a big file in terms of CAD drawings. So it gives you the option to have it at original size or scale to fit the artboard. And remember, I don't have to have this to scale, and I don't know what the original size is going to come in at. I just don't want it to overlap my artboard, so I'm going to say scale to fit. And then OK. So one of the reasons the file is moving so slow, and I left it like this on purpose for the demonstration, is to show you these layers here. So all of the layers that were used in AutoCAD actually came in with the file and are shown as separate layers in Illustrator, which is nice. So taking a look at this, again, Command minus will zoom you out, and Command plus, I'm holding down the Command and hitting the plus key to get a sense of the size of the paper here. If you want to resize your paper or the document setup, and this white area is called the artboard, which is similar to the canvas in Photoshop. If you are using the Move Select tool here, the selection tool, then it brings up a bar across the top that says Document Setup. If you're in a different tool, sometimes the well, it's not doing it now, but sometimes the top bar will change, and if you can't find this Document Setup, then go to selection tool. Then you can click document setup and hit edit artboards. And right here, you can see that it says that we're in tabloid, which is 11 by 17 standard size. And it gives you a bunch of different standard sizes that you can change the artboard to. The other thing that you can do is change the size here manually. So if I change this to 11 by 11 and hit return, it changes my artboard. I'm hitting Command Z to get back out of that. Pretty much the way that I'm going to do it is to just move my artboard manually by grabbing this this move handle here, and I'm just holding down my left mouse and moving this up and down. Before I do that, though, I want to get rid of this black area, which is the area that designates the ceiling of the space. And I can go into my layers here and look through them, and there's a tiny little thumbnail. I can see it here. I know this is probably the layer because it's very similar, and I can turn that off just by hitting the little eyeball there. You can also lock the layers just like you can in Photoshop. For this drawing, I want to, interesting. For this drawing, I'm using the zoom here to, and I hold the left mouse and I scroll back and forth with my mouse to zoom in or out also. I just need the area of the floor. So I'm going to go to document setup and almost use this artboard like cropping to just crop out the area that I want to work with. Okay, so now if I was to print this out right now, it would only print out this area of the floor. But I want to save this as a PDF just to compress it so it makes it a smaller file and it'll get rid of all these layers. And it would be a file that anybody can print out. I can take a PDF and print it out at Kinko's or something and then draw on it with a pencil or something. So I'm going to go to Save As. Then it gives me the option here where to save it. I'm going to save it to my desktop so I don't oversave it over my original file. And then you can save it just as a PDF here. Hit Save. Then it gives you more options. If I was to leave Preserve Illustrator editing capabilities clicked, then if I open it again in Illustrator, it's going to have all of these layers still. So I want to have that unclicked. And then there's other options here. If you wanted to save it to be a smaller file size, you can save it as older versions of Acrobat. I'm in 8, and it's just kind of, if you saved it at 4, it would take a few megabytes possibly off of your file size. You can also change this to be custom. If I change this, say, to high quality print, because I want the line work to be really nice, it automatically checked the Preserve Illustrator editing capabilities box again. I've done this a few times and I'm like, why am I still getting the layers? You have to go back and uncheck that. I'm gonna hit save, okay. And then it doesn't change here. You have to close out of it. And then if I was to open this, I'm gonna drag this into Adobe Reader just to show you what it looks like there. So you only have that area that's in the artboard. And now if I open it back up in Illustrator, notice all the layers that were there before are gone. Now we're just down to, it's flattened everything out to one layer. And I can zoom in and now play around with some of the Illustrator functions. So again, with layers here, this is my background layer. You can double click on the name and change it to building plan. An architectural term for looking straight down on the building is a plan view. If you were looking at the wall straight on, it's called an elevation. I want to lock this so that when I'm drawing on it, I don't end up accidentally moving around my background. And then just like Photoshop, you can hit the little plus button here. And that will create a new layer. And I'm just going to title this play because I'm going to mess around with shapes and stuff on here just to get a sense of what my design might be. So what I did was with this, actually, I took this to Kinko's and printed it out to be the size of my work table. And I some tracing paper and laid the tracing paper over the top and then sketched over it with pencil. But if you wanted to design digitally with it, you can do that. Moving over here to my toolbar, there are different tools here. I'm going to go through a few of them as we go, but you click on the rectangle and hold the left mouse button down. It'll give you a range of other tools within that category. I'm just going to pick the star tool because it's neat and it's similar to some of the critters that I designed in my for my floor. So if you are in star and you hover over the area you want to start, click with the left mouse and hold and drag your mouse, and you can make a shape kind of, you can rotate it, move it in and out to make it a certain size, and it stays pretty much constrained to the scale. And then when you release, it releases at the size that you let go at. So I'm just going to quickly put a bunch of stars around here. Let's say this is my floor design. This gives me an opportunity to show you a little bit about fill tool and also moving objects back and forth within the space. So everything okay? I heard the phone there. We good?
Yes.
Okay. So to color things in and to change the fill and the stroke, this box here designates the fill and this is the stroke. If you flip these, that means it'll change the colors and also change what area you're working on. If you click on the stroke below, that means that's the area that we're working with. So that's going to give me the chance to change the color of the stroke. And then you can always go back to default. So let's say to change the color is different than in Photoshop with Illustrator. To change the colors of things, you have to click on individual objects to change the colors. So if I want to change the color of this, and I want to change the fill, I make sure I'm in fill, and then just for ease, I'm going to use the color picker to pick a color, and it automatically changes that fill. If I want to change the stroke, I have to make sure that I'm in stroke, and then I can pick that color. Stroke is important in Illustrator because it helps you to change the line weight of things like your pen tool and the outline of individual objects. So if you you can use the stroke slider here, or you can pick already designated sizes of strokes. So like if I hit 14, it's going to change the size of that. One thing that's cool, if I want all of these to look similar, I can select each one by clicking with my left mouse, holding shift. And if I hold shift and click over other ones, it'll select multiples. And then I believe if I go to, where is it? The color picker tool, it will change all of them to be the same exact stroke and fill as the rest of them. Another thing that you will need to know when you're working with shapes is the arrange tool here. So if you can find these in different ways, you can hit the right mouse button and go down to arrange, and it gives you the option to either bring this one shape all the way to the front or send it all the way to the back, or just bring it forward a step. So every time I put down a star, the last one I put down is going to be the topmost one. So if I want that last one to go all the way to the back, then I would hit send to back. If I just wanted it to go below the very recent one that I just selected before the last one, then you hit send backward. And you can also use, it'll show you here the shortcuts. So the shortcut for this would then be command parentheses to do that with. So I'm going to show you what happens when I send it to the back. It sends this green one all the way behind all of the ones, even the most recent ones that I laid down. And then if you want, a lot of times I end up doing the command parentheses and either use the left or right parentheses to bring it to the front. I'll just end up clicking and holding it until it brings it all the way. So I'm just like tapping away on this thing. And then, so to bring it forward, it's the right one. So I'm tapping, holding down Command and tapping, and it brought it all the way to the front. So another tool that's helpful here is the Pathfinder tool. And to find all these boxes, windows that I've got open here, you go to Window and then see which ones are checked. My Layers one is checked, that's open. I want Pathfinder, it says it's checked, which I just didn't see it here. It's this. And this lets you work with each individual objects, and you can fuse them together. You can trim them by using other shapes. So if I wanted to trim off the bottom of these stars just to make sure that it looks like it's within my drawing area, within my design area, excuse me, I can go to Rectangle and just draw a rectangle to use as my cutting tool. I'm going to change this back to the default colors. And then to do that, I'll use the left mouse click and hold Shift down and click which objects that I want to cut or trim. And then I can go to Pathfinder, and you have these different options. Divide, trim is what I'm going to use. Merge, it'll merge them together. So this all becomes one shape. I don't know if you can hear my cat grumbling to try to get out. Here's hitting the trim. And then what it did was change it all to be just a fill for some reason. Even though they disappeared, if you hover over them, you can find the stars that are still there. They just don't have a fill within them for some reason. So then I'm going to just go back and click that so I can the default fill and stroke to get them back. And now they've all become one group. So you can group things by going to Object and Group, or you can ungroup things by going to Object, Ungroup, or you can right mouse click and go to Ungroup, and it will ungroup this selection. And then when I click my rectangle that trimmed everything and then hit delete, it trims everything where I wanted it there. Okay, so I'm going to move to another illustration to show you how shapes. Okay, so there are a bunch of different ways that you can turn sketches into vector files. The reason that you want to turn these into vector files is so that you get the nice hard line. Everything good, Barry?
We're losing your audio. It just started happening.
I haven't changed anything. Can you hear me okay now?
We can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah, maybe I'm getting too far away. Is there anything I need to repeat? Think I need to repeat anything, or are we good? Just keep moving?
We're good. Yeah.
Okay. So there are different ways to vectorize your drawing. So I like to draw in pencil and then bring it into Photoshop to make sure I got a nice hard even line. So I took this photo with my phone earlier of this pen and ink drawing that I did, and I can bring that into Photoshop really quickly and crop it using the crop tool like I showed last week. Excuse me. To get my phone shadows out of there, cropping it, hitting return. And then I'm just going to try auto contrast and see what I get. Not much. Auto color, see what I get. It's a little wider now. And then just go to brightness and contrast, because I just really want to get this this dark line to be as dark as possible for when I import it into Illustrator. And then I'm going to save it. All right, so now I'm going to bring this pen and ink drawing, which is a raster file, it's a photo, into Illustrator. And again, you know it's raster because when you zoom in, it starts to pixelate. It's not a hard edged line. Even though this isn't the function that I used for my line drawing, because I needed to create a line drawing, I want to show you this anyway because it's really cool. You can use the move tool, hold down. If this is another thing that's different. Everything okay, Barry? Okay, this is something that's different than Photoshop. If you were to scale things in Photoshop, you just hold down the left mouse and move it back and forth, and it scales it in proportion. For some reason in Illustrator, it's the opposite. So I'm just holding down the left mouse key and it's not scaling it in proportion. So to keep it in proportion, you have to hold Shift to constrain it to the correct proportions. And I'm just bringing it into my artboard that I know is an 11 by 17, hitting Command 0 to bring everything to fit within my screen. I think I can get rid of Pathfinder. I can get rid of swatches. So an easy way to change this into a vector is to just select it, make sure it's selected with the bounding box, go to Object, Image Trace, make and expand, hit OK, it says it's going to go slow. And now it has instantly changed my pen and ink drawing to a vector file. So you see is I can zoom all the way in and you have this crisp line. And then hit Command 0 to get back to the screen. The way that you color this in, let me show you really quickly. I'm going to put the box back here. Here's something else I can show you. Go back to my swatches that I just turned off. For some reason, there are no colors in this Illustrator file that I just opened, probably because this was saved in black and white. If there are no colors in your swatch window here, you can find some colors by going to this little stack of books here, which is a swatch libraries. And they have a bunch of different colors that you can choose from. Celebration, I'll just pick Celebration. I like to use, when I'm doing graphic design, I go to color books and then Pantone, solid uncoated are my favorite. So now I have some swatches here that I can use. And I'm going to hit Command left parentheses to put that behind. And the reason I'm doing that is I just want to show you that even when I did the live trace, it filled in the background too. And I would just want to keep this background transparent. So to change that to live paint, make sure you have the drawing selected that you want to change to live paint. Go to Object, drop down to live paint, and just hit Make. Okay, now I know that I can color this in with different colors by going to, which one is it? Not that one. The live paint bucket. So this is similar to the fill tool in Photoshop, and you hover over an area and it will change the color. So I'll change that to yellow and hover over and change that. How do you get rid of this background? You can, I got to get back into my live paint bucket. You basically just turn the fill off, and to turn the fill or the stroke off, you make sure you're in the one that you want, and then you hit this none, and it will change that. Now I have no color, and I can just click this background and get rid of that background color. So this is one way I could have used to color in each one of these shapes, but it's wrong because they want a line drawing. And they also, I just saved this to show you, this is not what they want. They didn't want me to draw both sides of the line. They just want a single line for what I'm doing. And I'll show you how to get that next. Okay, so what I actually did was draw these in pencil, just a simple pencil line, and then bring that into, actually here's the other way you can open things in Illustrator. Go to File, Open, and then search on my desktop for where this file is at. Click it and hit Open. All right, so then backing out, I'm still in 11 by 17. Back to my layers here. I'm going to use the pen tool to draw on top of this, but I want to be able to see my pen tool. So again, I got to do that really quick. I want to be able to see my pen tool. So if I'm drawing on it, it's a little bit darker, but I like to actually make this layer transparent. And this is different than Photoshop. There's not an option to make your layer transparent within the layers. You actually have to go select the bit that you want to change to transparent, and then there's a transparency window that you find in Windows, and you can slide that transparency down to make it a little bit lighter. So you basically change the transparency of individual shapes. So I'm going to lock this layer, save it as pencil line. Wow, what was that? Okay, and then I'm going to lock it and create a new layer to draw my pen line over the top of this with. So the pen tool is pretty cool. You can draw geometric lines with them, straight lines, curved lines. If I click and hold the left mouse button, it gives me the different options for the pen tool. I'm going to just be using the regular pen tool to begin with. These add anchor points and delete anchor points, and then the anchor point tool, I'll show you how to use those as well. So let's say I just want to start tracing over this. To do this really simply, because I'm already kind of losing time here, click the pen tool, make sure that I'm in stroke with no fill. I just want to be able to see the line only. And let me zoom in a little bit more. So to use the pen tool, it's a click and release. So if I click the point that I want to use with my left mouse, click and release, and then you get a straight line here. If you hold shift down, it'll keep it to 45, 90, etc. But I want to make a curve. So what I do is hold the mouse over the next point that I want to draw, and then I click and hold the left mouse button down. So I get these cool handles here. And then I can manipulate that curve to match. You can zoom in and out like this. And then release, click and hold. If I didn't do that, if I didn't click this point again, I have less control over my curve for some reason. So if I clicked here and then tried to match it up, it doesn't work. So if I click it again, it gets rid of this other anchor, and I can click and hold and then change that curve, click with the mouse and release. And then if I go here, you get that little circle again that shows you that I'm about to close this, which is important because if I wanted to, oops, hang on a second. If I wanted to make this a fill, you have to close the loop. So I'm going to click and hold and then finish that shape. And again, you can change the stroke by going down here and changing the size of that all the way down to, I think 0.05 or less, or 0. And that helps you to see the quality of the line there. And this is the size line I ended up giving to the fabricator. And then there's other fast ways to trace things. Rather than have to draw a circle, you can pick the ellipse tool. If I just hold down the left mouse, it'll draw an ellipse. If I hold shift and hold down the left mouse, it draws a constrained circle. And this differs from Vectorworks. If I was in Vectorworks, I could start in the center and make it land perfectly, but this you kind of have to guess a little bit. So I'm holding down shift and then drawing the circle kind of in the area that I think it's gonna be in. And then increasing my stroke so that you can see it. If I added a fill, everything below it disappears. I want to show you quickly just drawing curves. Again, I'm going to trace over this line. Click and release, click and hold. Actually, let me go back and get a little bit tighter here. And then I'm clicking and holding the mouse. So one thing to think about, this drawing that I'm doing here is going to be blown up to be 10 feet. So on my small screen, it looks like a pretty decent curve, but if you zoom way in, you'll see that there's a bend in it. And this bend will show up gigantic when it gets translated into a full-size metal piece of line work. So this is where there's a few different ways that you can fix this. These are just kind of quick ways. There's more in-depth ways of doing this on the tutorial. You can grab this anchor point tool and then hover over the anchor, left click and hold and move the curve to make it a little bit smoother. But then it could change what's happening down here. But we do have a smoother line. That's one way to do it. Another kind of cheaty way to do it is to add anchor points around it. So I'm going to hit the plus anchor point, put one there and put one there, and then go to the minus anchor point and then delete that anchor point. That's the problem, and it smooths it out a little bit. This is one of those things that just takes lots of practice. I've been doing this for a long time, and I kind of have a sense for these handles and stuff. It'll be frustrating, you know, for the first few weeks of doing it, but once you get the hang of it, it's not that hard. I wish I had more time to show you the pen tool, but we're running out of time, so I just want to show you the kind of final product. This was exactly what the fabricator was wanting, a single line drawing of each shape that I could just click this whole thing, hit copy, command copy, and then I'll show you my final line drawing here. And then I could hit command paste and it will drop what I just drew in to my main drawing. And I could add this, move it around, etc. So each one of these is movable. And here they are in different layers. And so this is what they were talking about, where they wanted my line drawing to be in different layers. So the layer of the floor plan by the architect is here. You can just turn that off. This is a line that I drew just to make sure I kept within the space. You can turn each individual section off, which helped me to kind of focus in on the design a little bit. What else did I want to show you? With Illustrator, it's a really good program for using text, which again, I wish I had more time to show you, but the Terrazzo fabricator wanted me to put numbers for every shape that had a different color delineation. So here you can just go to the big T and click on it, and then it gives you a cursor that looks like you're about to write something. Left click, and then if you double click on this, I guess preset word that they've given us here, select it all, and then you can just hit number 2 or whatever number you want to use, and then use the selection tool and change the size. And you know, say you pick a size you want to keep the same size, you can just copy that by command copy, command paste, and then you can move that. Right click. Oops. Right click, you can pick different fonts instantly. You can also find the different fonts up here in this top bar. One very last thing, this should only take a couple seconds to explain. When I created this file so that I could see the colors, I didn't do it in Illustrator because it just takes forever and it would mess with my single line. So if I wanted to select a color, I would have to go in, double click it, and then select each individual color, and I would have to make these its own shape, and it just became really complicated. So, so what I ended up doing was just taking my Illustrator drawing, and Photoshop opens up Illustrator really nicely. And I could come in here with the color picking tool. I actually selected all my colors based on Sherwin-Williams colors that the Terrazzo company asked me to use, and I had them all as swatches within my drawing, and I could just come in easily, pick colors, and change just the areas that are designated by this line, because it's all one line, if that makes sense. So I could just come in here and quickly, intuitively, like an artist, just add color. Okay, I'm actually going to stop right there so we have time for questions. I'm going to unshare. Should I unshare the screen, Barry, or what do you want to do?
It's entirely up to you.
Okay, I'll stop sharing and then we can take questions.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Are you with us, Katie?
I am. There are a couple things in the chat box. First of all, there are resources. Barry, I'm getting some feedback, and Bill, I'm getting some feedback. Do you guys want to mute yourself for a minute? Hard to hear myself. Okay. First of all, Doug Oland from the Office of Arts and Culture has added a mention of the Phoenix Arts and Culture Coronavirus Relief Program for arts and arts professionals. There's currently a grant application that is open and available for artists, and there is a link there. The deadline to apply is next Friday, September 18th, 2020. So make sure you check out those resources. I think there are two separate opportunities that you can apply for grant funding as artists on that page. Then also I included the link that Bill mentioned at the beginning of the workshop for the Adobe tutorials. I've just plugged that link in there so you can click on it. When we post this to YouTube, I'll include all of these links underneath the video as well. And then there was one question from Heather Bentz. Could Bill talk about sketching on tracing paper and then how he got that sketch into the program? I think that question was answered in two different ways through the presentation itself. And then also Doug has included a link to previous workshop videos. Stay tuned to that YouTube channel where we will continue to update we'll continue to update workshops as we get them completed and get them online. I'm a few workshops behind, but we'll get those up and going soon. And it looks like we've got a question from Allison Hunter. I love the fact that you brought the paint colors into Photoshop. How were you able to get that info before winning the project? Bill, do you want to talk a little bit about the process of how you got selected and then moving into the design phase and when you selected colors?
You're muted, Bill.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I was selected as a finalist just based on my paintings, my regular paintings that I do in the studio. And then we were asked to do kind of a preliminary concept idea to present to the judges, which we all did. And for the most part, you know, that was one of those things. It's almost like being a graphic designer, and you kind of have to, you want to guess what the client wants. And it was interesting to kind of come up with a design and then talk about it in front of the panel. And then knowing that if I did get selected, my design was most likely going to change, because once you get a project like this, you end up talking with fabricators and finding out what does work and what doesn't work with your initial finalist design. And then myself and Frank got picked to do floors out of the seven finalists. And then once I got chosen, that's when I did a full redesign. I basically changed my design completely from what it was. My original design was kind of very Southwesty because that was the cues I was getting from the judges to begin with. And I changed it to this super bright colored design that's like more similar to my work. Which is one thing I want to point out. City of Phoenix Office of Arts and Cultures is great because they remind you, like, this isn't a design. We want art. We want artists to do these projects. So they really, both Ed and Barry helped me to keep my artist hat on and take my designer hat off in certain cases. And so, but with this, having the knowledge of these programs, I knew how to go. I could for picking colors, to answer your question, I had already gotten the project when I picked the colors. So I picked the colors myself. I knew that the Terrazzo company was going to use Sherwin-Williams colors. So you can get a swatch book, and you can also find those colors digitally just by typing Sherwin-Williams and then the color on the swatch book. So if it's like lime green or something, you can type Sherwin-Williams lime green and it will give you the color code to plug in to Illustrator or Photoshop to get the exact color. And that's how I use the swatches. Does that answer your question? Hopefully. Okay, cool.
This is Ed. Let me just circle back on one of the questions Katie brought up. Heather, did you get the answer you needed on how how things get transferred from trace onto the programs?
I think I did. Thank you. But I do need a little clarification. And of course, landscapers just came, and so they're super to our neighbor's house. So I've got a lot of noise coming in. Bill, because when I put the question in, you were talking about designing online as opposed to, even though you had said you designed your project by sketching by hand. So I was most interested in how you designed by hand. And so that's why I'd asked that question. And you said you had put tracing paper over the large printout and then drew on top. And then did you take one photo of your whole tracing paper, or did you take individual photos of each little flower or design?
Oh, I actually took it to Kinko's and scanned it, and they just scanned bits of it on their the biggest scanner that they had, and then I took that and put it into Photoshop and basically edited them all together, and then dropped that image into Illustrator, similar to how I dropped the pencil line that I just used into Illustrator.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Yeah, because if I would have drawn that in the computer first, it would have became a pattern design, you know what I mean? But using a pencil helped keep me in artist mode.
A couple more comments and questions have come in from Joe Ray. It says, Bill, this was fantastic and inspiring on a creative level as well as a technical and production level. Great job. From Allison Hunter, have you ever worked with Terrazzo before? This is a really beautiful design.
I actually haven't designed anything in Terrazzo before, but my good friend Fausto did his floor design. I think it's the 44th Street station. So I got to see his whole process, which was great. And then I did the public art tours to go look at the floors and hear the artists talk about their process. When I worked at the Getty, I was there to help design a lot of the Getty Villa that opened up a while back, and they did all Terrazzo. So I got to see the process for every gallery and how they used the metal to create the Roman numerals in the floor and for each gallery and that kind of thing. So I had a sense for what Terrazzo could do, and I knew that they, I'd seen industrial versions of it before, and really the challenge was to how to, make sure it really felt like my work, like my art, in a way that, I thought went well with the architecture.
And I've got one more question here from the chat box. Similar to Heather's question, what is your go-to strategy for bringing live, real-world art into the digital world?
I guess I could take that in a bunch of different ways. I think what's interesting is that thinking about art in the digital realm, when you see something digitally, it's really tightened up, and you don't get to see the textures and all that kind of thing. So this may not be answering your question exactly, but with my real paintings, I try to add tons of texture and have lots of little details that you wouldn't necessarily see in digital form. And so, when it comes to bringing like live real world art into the digital world, I try to, I guess, like show a lot of details, zoom in details of the work. I'm not sure if this is answering your question, but I mean, there's a lot of people really trying to figure out how to do this with like viewing rooms and things like that, where you're standing in a gallery and you can see a painting or a sculpture virtually and walk up to it, look around it, get information, that kind of thing. I think it's better than nothing. I don't think it's the best way to view art. I think that art should be viewed in person. So I kind of focus more of my attention on, how to like get people to get away from the digital world of art and come out into the real world and look at the real thing.
And then I've got one more question that's come in from Mitra Kamali. She says, thanks for this amazing session. How long did it take to make the drawing into a vector line?
It took kind of a few days, actually, because it's really tedious. Each one of those, what I call critters or mandalas, could take up to an hour or more, because that, I am a graphic designer, but I'm not on the computer every day like a graphic designer. So I'm sure there might be even better ways to use that pen tool, but I have my way that I learned on my own that I was showing you. And so to make sure I get it right, I really sit there and go zoom way in and change every little curve, every little detail until it's perfect. And so it just depends on my learning curve to do that kind of stuff.
And I have just one more comment from the chat box from Oliviero Balcells. Nice design. Thanks, Bill. Do we have any more questions from our participants today? I'm not seeing any, but please feel free to contact us after if anyone has additional questions. And make sure to sign up for Bill's next workshop next Thursday.
Thank you,
Yep. We'll
Katie. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Barry, and thank you, one and all. Just one quick reminder, as Katie mentioned and Doug brought up, there are artist grants and arts professional grants available. So if you've suffered a financial loss from COVID in the past months, look at those grants and qualifications that are necessary to see if you might be able to apply for those. It's important that everybody get involved with that. And the other thing, as I think Barry just mentioned, the next one is going to be SketchUp, and that's next Thursday, the 17th. And then after that, on the 24th, will be Bill's deep dive into Vectorworks. And so with that, I thank you all for joining us on this pretty day, and we'll see you again next week, same time, same bat channel. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.